That my girlfriend's revenge made me her twin. I always thought I knew who I was. I had a steady job, a nice apartment, and a girlfriend, Sarah, who I considered to be the love of my life. Everything about my world seemed predictable and secure. But it wasn't perfect. Not really. There was a lingering dissatisfaction. A sense that something was missing. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It wasn't that Sarah wasn't amazing, she was. In fact, she was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, spontaneous, adventurous. She always had these wild ideas, and I loved her for it. Yet, I couldn't help but feel like I was only along for the ride, never really living fully. I had built my life around comfort and security, never stepping outside the lines of what was safe. Maybe that's why, after 2 years of dating, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was starting to pull away. She was still there, of course, but she seemed different, distant. She would make jokes, sometimes cutting, sometimes playful, about my lack of ambition, about my inability to push myself. I took it as teasing, but deep down I knew she was frustrated with me. One evening, while sitting at a small cafe, Sarah said something that struck me more than I let on. We were talking about our plans for the future when she suddenly asked, "Do you even know who you are, Ben? I mean, really? Or are you just pretending to be happy?" I laughed it off, but the question lingered in my mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been pretending to be happy, pretending to live a life that I wasn't fully embracing. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something I hadn't admitted before. I didn't want to change. I wanted Sarah to change. I wanted her to stop pushing me to be something I wasn't. Little did I know, Sarah had been harboring feelings of her own. Feelings that, in her own way, would force me to confront not just who I was, but who I could become. It all started on a Friday night, a week after that conversation. Sarah and I had been bickering about something trivial like we always did. The tension had been building between us for months, and it was starting to crack open, revealing everything we had kept buried. "Ben," she started, her voice sharp, "you're so stuck in your ways. You're terrified of change. But guess what? I'm not. And I'm done waiting for you to catch up." Her words cut deeper than I expected, and I felt a rush of guilt. But there was something else, something darker. A part of me realized that, even though I didn't want to change, I also didn't want to lose her. Then, Sarah did something that took me by surprise. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a mix of determination and mischief. "You think I've been hard on you," she said, voice low. "Let me show you what real change feels like." Before I could react, she stood up and walked out of the cafe, leaving me with a swirl of confusion and unease. I tried to call her, but my phone rang out. I was left sitting there, bewildered, unsure of what had just happened. By the time I got home, I found a note taped to the door. It read, "I hope you're ready to see the world through my eyes, Ben. It's time you became me." It was the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. The following days were a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Sarah had disappeared for a few days, leaving me with only that cryptic message to cling to. I couldn't understand what she meant by becoming her, but I knew one thing. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. On Monday, I walked into work to find that things had taken a drastic turn. My reflection in the mirror was no longer mine. The face that stared back at me was identical to Sarah's. My features, my eyes, my nose, my mouth had shifted, now reflecting hers with an eerie perfection. The transformation wasn't just physical. There was something else, something I couldn't quite explain. It was as though I could feel the world differently, experience it through her eyes. I immediately called Sarah, panic bubbling up in my chest. When she answered, her voice was calm and collected, but I could sense a subtle amusement beneath the surface. "It's happening, Ben," she said softly. "You're becoming me. Don't fight it." My heart raced. "What did you do to me?" "It's not what I did," she replied, her voice steady. "It's what you're doing to yourself. You've been too comfortable for too long. Now you're going to learn what it feels like to be in my shoes, to see the world as I do." For the first time, I felt completely helpless. My life, my identity, everything I thought I knew, had been turned upside down. Over the next few weeks, I struggled to navigate my new reality. I went through the motions of my daily life, but everything felt alien. I had become Sarah in every way possible. From the way I spoke to the way I walked, everything was now a reflection of her. I started receiving strange looks from people who used to know me, and I couldn't help but feel out of place in my own life. Yet, with each passing day, something shifted inside me. I began to understand Sarah in a way I never had before. Her confidence, her fearlessness, her ability to take risks without hesitation. It was all part of who she was, a side of her I had never truly acknowledged. At first, I resisted, clinging to the remnants of my old self. But slowly, I found myself embracing the change, the transformation, the idea that maybe this new identity was the catalyst I needed to unlock something I had been hiding from for years. I experimented with Sarah's clothes, her makeup, even her style of speaking. And each time I did, I felt a new part of myself awaken, a part one had kept buried beneath my safe, predictable life. But the journey was not without its challenges. As I became more like Sarah, the more I realized how much I had taken her strength for granted. People started noticing my shift in behavior. At work, my colleagues were both intrigued and wary of the new me. Some complimented me, while others questioned if this was a sign of mental instability. Then came the confrontation with my closest friends. They saw the changes in me, and not all of them were supportive. "Ben, what is going on with you?" my best friend Mark asked one evening. "This isn't you. You've completely changed. You're acting like someone else." "I'm not acting," I replied, my voice unrecognizable to my own ears. "I'm just finally seeing things from a different perspective." "But why Sarah's perspective?" Mark pressed, his tone filled with concern. "You're losing yourself in all of this." The weight of his words hit me hard. Was I losing myself? Had I become so consumed by Sarah's identity that I was no longer Ben? The internal struggle intensified. I wanted to find my own voice, my own identity again. But the more I embraced Sarah's world, the harder it became to distinguish where she ended and I began. It was then that I had a moment of clarity. As I stood before the mirror, fully transformed into Sarah, I realized that I wasn't just mimicking her. I was becoming her, yes, but in doing so, I was discovering my own strength. I had spent so long living in the shadow of others, avoiding the uncomfortable parts of myself, that I had never truly understood my own potential. I saw it then, the beauty in embracing change, in shedding the old layers that no longer served me. I wasn't just becoming Sarah. I was becoming the best version of myself, the version I had always been too afraid to face. The person who could take risks, face challenges head-on, and live with unapologetic confidence. The turning point came when I decided to confront Sarah. I had to tell her that I was no longer just following in her footsteps. I was carving my own path. When we met at a park, her eyes studied me, as if waiting for me to say the words she knew were coming. "I'm not you, Sarah," I said, my voice strong and unwavering. "I've learned from you, but I'm not you. I am Ben, but a better version of him." For the first time, I saw pride in her eyes. "I never wanted you to be me, Ben. I wanted you to be the best version of yourself. And now I see that you've found it." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. I had faced my fears, embraced the unknown, and emerged stronger than ever before. I had not only survived the transformation, I had thrived. In the months that followed, I integrated what I had learned into my life. I was no longer bound by fear or self-doubt. My relationship with Sarah deepened as we both embraced the new versions of ourselves. I found my voice, and I finally understood what it meant to live authentically. I was no longer just the man who had lived in the shadows of others' expectations. I was Ben, and I was free. The journey of self-discovery is never easy, but it is worth it. Embrace change, even when it seems uncomfortable, because through transformation comes strength. The person you are meant to become is waiting for you to step into the light.